a red flag flying here.
Hello and welcome to Socialist Think Tank. Today I am here with Mel Wilson. Hello, Mel.
Hi, Paul. It's really good to be here. I'm so excited to be asked. I love coming on the show.
Yeah, well, we're really glad to have you. Like, you know, you're a proper good character, and I've got to know you kind of tiny bit over the past couple of years with your activism and anti-racism and things and events we've been at and stuff. And it's just a real pleasure to have you on, and it's great to have a great trade unionist on as well. So I'm going to ask, to start off with, the question we always ask our guests. What is socialism to you?
The big question. Obviously, I've seen a fair few of these shows, and it's been really interesting actually to get everyone's take on what they view socialism as, and actually so many different opinions on it and what people think it is to them. And a lot of them, I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, you're right about that. That's what it means to me too. I think for me, it's about building a community. So we have, you know, your standard communities, your little village, your town or whatever. But I think this is building a collective community amongst people, amongst like-minded people, and about looking after each other, treating people like family, you know, and making sure that everyone's got what they need, rather than this notion of, you know, people being better than each other, that we should all be one big happy family, if you like. I mean, that sounds that's quite a utopia idea, that, isn't it, really? But that's what it means to me anyway. It's about looking after each other. It's about building communities, and being stronger as a collective, you know, rather than being individuals out there on your own by yourself looking after number one. You've got to look after those around you, and bigger picture, people that aren't able to look after themselves. They need people like us to fight for them, and to make sure that they have what they need to live a comfortable life.
I think I'm getting a really strong sense of you thinking that when people are together, that's a stronger position to be in. You know, you're much stronger when people are united. Is that how you feel?
Exactly that. Yeah. I think you're always stronger when you've got a collective voice, when you've got more than one person shouting about the same things, and helping each other with the same things. You've got a much better voice when you all bring it together and you act as this big collective. And I think that is what socialism is to me. It's a big collective community. We look after each other and we look after everybody else around us, and not just socialists. We look after everyone from the whole spectrum. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. You know, I want to be there to look after you, to take care of you, to make sure you've got what you need.
So is this something that you've always felt? So have you always been a socialist?
I think so. Certainly, it goes back to when I was about 12 is when I first got into politics, really. And that came about because I lived in Devon at the time, and a friend of mine, we'd got into talking about travellers and the traveller movement, because we were into the levellers, and so we'd got talking about travellers and what they do and how they're persecuted and things like that. And it was about that time that Michael Howard was bringing in the Criminal Justice Act, and we were talking about that and how it persecutes travellers. And there was a march in Exeter, and we both went to this march. First time, obviously, we'd ever done anything like that. We were 12, and we'd gone on our own, and it was just brilliant. And it brought this sense of community and this collectivism that I talked about there, and that's where it's rooted from, really. You know, I grew up in a working class family. You know, my dad was a trade unionist for a while in his later career, and it's come from that, really. It's been brought up in a working class community and wanting to fight for other people that haven't got that fight in them, you know, who aren't able to fight for themselves and for their rights. So I think that's definitely where it comes from.
That's really interesting that you're standing up for the traveller community, and we're seeing quite a bit of anti-GRT, Gypsy Roma traveller racism. It's worrying, and it's worrying that people are using a very similar rhetoric to we've seen in the past in Europe in the 1930s. towards that community. So it's really interesting that you got into that. What was it about the Levelers that got you into that particular campaign?
It was their music really, because in particular, one song that they put out, Battle of the Beanfield, which is one of my all-time favourites, and it spoke about what happened on the Beanfield, where travellers were basically beaten up on by police. If you haven't read about it, do a little Wikipedia search, because it's a really interesting story, really awful thing that happened. And they wrote a song about it. It happened in the late 80s. They wrote a song 1992, 93, and that was one of the first songs that we'd listened to, and it told the story of what happened. So obviously, listening to that song and it being a really great song, we started to look up and actually try and understand what had happened at this Battle of the Beanfield, because we didn't know anything about it until we'd heard the song. And it was at that point where you read about it and you think, wow, this literally happened just a few years ago. This has happened in our lifetime. Why is this happening? These people were supposed to be here to protect us, and they haven't. They've persecuted these people because they choose to live in a van. I mean, it's just, when you say it like that, it just sounds completely ridiculous. Why would you persecute somebody for the way that they live? It's just, to me, it's just not right. It's not right at all.
So would you say that, like, your feelings around socialism, and I think this is true of a lot of socialists actually, and I'm expecting a particular answer here, but would you say that you just believe everyone should be born equal, regardless of, like, what they choose to do and how they choose to live their life? Is everyone equal, and is that where it's coming from? You were just absolutely shocked that they would treat another human being like this.
Exactly that, Paul. Yeah, we're all born the same way, we die the same way, and we should all be equal in life. We should be. Obviously, there's going to be other factors that don't make us equal, but in real terms, we should all be treated the same. We should be fair and equal society, which obviously, sadly, we don't see at the moment. And people see socialism as this weird, evil, lefty, freaky kind of thing. They see socialists, and some people treat it as a dirty word, and it's just not. We need to teach people that being a socialist is being caring. It's about looking after people and wanting people to have a fair and equal life.
So you've obviously got into this at a young age. Have you always stayed active? Have you always been involved in campaigns, or was that the start of a lot of things? Or, like, I know some people sometimes, like, dip in and out and like have things at a certain, and 12's a really young age to start off on the campaigns. I don't think I can claim to do that, although I was on the poll tax marches as a child. So but is this something that's been continuous for you?
Pretty much. I mean, give or take a few years here and there that I've taken out, because it can, as you probably know, Paul, it can get really draining. You spend so long dealing with politics, and in working life as well. It's quite political what I do, so it is quite hard. So yeah, give or take a few years, it's mostly been the whole time. I mean, obviously, I stood as a parliamentary candidate in, what year was it now, 2017, and that was for the Green Party at the time. My politics had shifted a little bit, not away from socialism. Not. I didn't find that at that time Labour was socialist enough for me at that time when I stood for the Green Party, and this was at the time when there was the Green Surge that started to happen, 2014, 2015, and so I joined them. And they had socialist ideas, and a lot of, obviously, environmental ideas, which is another thing that I'm really hot on. And so they really spoke to me, and I wanted to be in the Green Party. I wanted to stand for them. And actually, my is still with them in ways, even though I'm with the Labour Party now. But that's what I wanted to do at the time, and I needed to be with them. So my politics have shifted quite a bit, but it's always been on a campaigning level. I've always done that. There's always been something that's come about. I'm always on marches or whatever, loads of different things. And a good few years ago, 13, I believe it was, a couple of friends and myself, we founded which started with a rally in Darlington, grew and grew. We had another couple of rallies, and then a whole group of people walked from Jarrow to Parliament. Sadly, I could only join them for a couple of short legs because I'm pregnant. And that movement's carried on, and I've drifted away from that a couple of years ago now. But that movement is still there. It's still carried on by a couple of the founders. So that's something that I've been really proud of to have been involved in at the start. But yeah, I mean, you know, your ideas shift, the things that you want to focus on shift. So I moved away from that at the time. I thought it was a good time to move on to something else and do something else. And that became trade unionism.
So for you, like, how do you think trade unionism is linked with socialism? Do you think they're one and the same, or do you think they're different things?
I think they're the same. I certainly treat them as the same. I think being a union activist, that is socialism, because you are there to look after your members, to do the right thing for them, to make sure that they have a fair and equal workplace, that they have everything that they need, that they're looked after. And that you're there for them, you know, and again, it's building a community and building a collectivism with members at work.
So earlier on, you mentioned standing as a parliamentary candidate, and this is quite a kind of fun thing, given that you're a member of Sedgefield constituency Labour Party. So can you tell me a little bit about standing as a parliamentary candidate? What that meant, and you know, and what that process was. Anything you want, actually, about standing as a candidate in Sedgefield.
Well, yeah, Sedgefield. So at the time, as I said before, Labour for me wasn't socialist enough. It wasn't doing the right things. It wasn't being led very well, and particularly in Sedgefield, I felt I could not vote for my Labour MP. I could not physically cast a vote for my Labour MP, and at the time I was like, well, look, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. But I can't not do anything. I can't sit here and say I'm not doing that because I don't like his politics. What can I do? Well, I can stand myself. I can stand myself, and I can give other people that option. I can give them a voice that they perhaps didn't have before. You know, people that perhaps wanted to vote Green or had more socialist ideas and were environmental, and it gave them a voice. We got votes, and that act, you know, there was nearly 900 votes, which was a voice for 900 people. You know, that's how I see it. For me, it wasn't a loss. That was a gain. That was a big gain for 900 people to have a voice. And you know, and that's why I want to stand it. It's about giving people another option and something that might fit their beliefs better than what was already there.
So what was it about, like you said, the leadership of the Labour Party at the time? The leadership of the Labour Party in 2017 was Jeremy Corbyn, wasn't it? So like, was this a legacy thing because you did subsequently join the Labour Party, didn't you? Or was this a local thing, or was this more of a national thing, or?
It was more of a local thing, and it, you know, it went back to way before Jeremy was leader, and I didn't really know much about Jeremy at the time, when he was first elected, certainly, and obviously when he became leader and he came out with some wonderful stuff, that's what brought me back. It was listening to him be a leader, and that brought me back definitely, which was brilliant. But yeah, certainly at the time, the local Labour Party just wasn't good enough, the MP.
Interesting, because obviously, like, this is my CLP as well, and it's one of the reasons I know you now. In 2017, I was not the chair of Sedgefield Labour Party. So like, you know, you've become a strong member for us, a strong advocate for the Labour Party lately. So what changed post 2017? Are we more socialist?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'm not even sure you could get much more socialist actually in our CLP. We're really quite good at the moment. Obviously, I'm going to say that to you. No, I think it's shifted obviously for the better. Obviously for the better. You know, it's not perfect. Who is perfect? And you wouldn't want it to be perfect, because you've still got to have a bit of a broad spectrum, haven't you? But we have to move back to what Labour should be, and that is a socialist party. So, and you know, Sedgefield CLP has made a massive inroad into that, absolutely massive, and it makes me want to stay. And I know lately with the new leadership, a lot of people have wanted to leave because of that. You know, I didn't vote for Keir Starmer. But I wouldn't leave because of his leadership. I'm here to stay now because I think we have to build it from the bottom up.
Good, solid bottom-up socialism. That's what we're about, you know, and giving people power. So I know that you are really active in the trade union movement, and that's one of the things that you're incredibly passionate about. And I think that probably comes from, you've just described there, that like bottom-up socialism, about empowering people, and is that what trade unionism is for you? Tell me a little bit about yourself in your trade union role. Obviously, it's CWU, as we can see from the lovely posters behind you. And by the way, CWU, CWU, by the way, have the best T-shirts. You know, the ones with the black and the sparkly writing. They're so good. You know,
yes,
they're the best. They're the best trade union T-shirts. So very jealous of those. So tell me a little bit about your role in the CWU.
Well, I am a national rep for EE workers. So I sit on the national team to negotiate rights, benefits, pay for EE workers, and I represent the North East. So we have 3 call centres around the North East, in North Tyneside, Sunderland and Darlington. I'm based in Darlington, but I represent on a national level for those three call centres, and I've been doing that now for nearly 2 years, since we actually got recognition. It'll be 2 years in May that we got recognition for EE workers. Obviously, EE is owned by BT, and they've had the union recognised for a lot of years. You know, years and years and years, probably longer than I've been alive. And so it was really important to us that we got recognition in EE for the EE workers, so that we got benefits and pay and terms and conditions that our BT counterparts have. So that's why I got involved in that. Yeah, so, and with trade unionism in the workplace, we are one big team, one big massive family for our members, and our members are that community because they come to us, me, and tell us when there's problems, not just on an individual basis, but you know, in a team or an area. They'll come and tell us what the problems are, and we can then go to the company and speak with the company and you know, and try and get them to resolve these issues, which is always good to get things resolved, you know, without taking it further. You know, nobody wants to take it really far with management and things like that, although we might have to lately, because we did announce an industrial ballot day before yesterday. So that's happening. We're going to ballot our members for strike action, just to get the company to listen to us, you know, and that's what it's about. It's about opening dialogue with the company and having our members' voices heard and being that collectivism.
Now, I'm going to do the devil's advocate in my normal ridiculous style, which will be like kind of a bit sarcastic. But so obviously, you're balloting for strike action, you're balloting for industrial action, and that's a very easy thing to do because you know, it's so easy for people to just walk out. It'll cause people all these awful problems. which is terrible, and you have a moral obligation to just keep people happy. And also, you've probably got unreasonable demands. So, why are people deciding to take strike action, given what I've just said, which was probably what the Daily Mail will say?
Yeah, yeah. If it was that easy, we'd have done it a long time ago, believe me. No, it's really not easy. It's not easy to make that decision, to even decide to do that. You have to be pushed really far to come to that decision, to even ask members to walk out. So the dialogue has, it's got to have broken down at some point. And we're not talking about, massive pay rises and things like that. We're not doing that. What we want is fairness. We want fairness across the board, amongst all the brands. And we want people to be treated equally. We want good pay and terms and conditions. And we're just not getting the dialogue is what's not happening. So that's why we're doing it, and it's not easy to do, and people won't find it easy to think about doing that, but it's in their interest, it's in their best interest to get what they need, and that's what we're doing. It is to get what they need, what they want, and that's why we're doing it. So it's not easy. It won't be easy. It won't be easy to make that decision, but obviously as reps we're there to listen to people's concerns and try and allay the fears, and hopefully get a really good turnout.
So is the point of a strike to inconvenience people, and how do you think? So we've got a lot of jobs at the moment that really don't seem to do very much. If certain jobs went on strike, nothing would happen. The world would continue as it is, and the world would continue to turn, and everything would be fine. But communication workers, I think people would notice the difference. So what disruption will your strike cause if you go on strike, do you think?
And obviously we're talking about call centre workers here. So, if we have members walk out, that's going to put a strain on taking calls. So if you're a customer, you've got a problem, you're trying to get through to somebody on the other end of the phone, whether that BT, EE, whoever, then yeah, you're going to see some disruption there because there won't be the people there to answer your call.
And I suppose the argument there that I said at the beginning was the Daily Mail argument would be this will cause a disruption. So what's the point of causing a disruption? Is it to highlight the fact of how important your job actually is?
It's to cause inconvenience. If you cause inconvenience to a big company, that they're going to listen, that they will have to listen. Because the longer that inconvenience goes on for, the more profits dip. And let's be realistic, that's what big companies want. They want profits. And if they're not able to answer customers' calls, well then, those customers may go elsewhere. So that is the point. It's creating an inconvenience. Nobody wants to do, we don't want to do that to the ordinary customer. We don't want to do that. But somebody has to listen to us. They have to.
One of the things that really annoys me about when people talk about strike action is people say, oh, it's going to be an inconvenience. Well, as you've said, that is the point. But the other thing is that they often blame the person who's decided to take that industrial action. Do people take industrial action lightly, do you think?
Absolutely not. I don't at all, and I think, and that's been apparent. With speaking to our members, they're wanting to get all the information. They want to understand why it is we're asking them to do this, and they do get it. They do understand because this is their livelihoods. We're about protecting jobs and making sure that they get fair pay. So they understand why they're doing it, but nobody takes this lightly. They really don't. I don't take this lightly. And it's just about putting a balance on it and trying to get them what they need and what they deserve.
So you've gone to the company, you've got reasonable demands. So who do you think is at fault if you go to strike? Is it just because people want to go on strike, or is it because the company has failed to respond to reasonable demands and failed to negotiate?
Exactly. It's not responding to what we deem as reasonable demands. Exactly. Which I won't go into the ins and outs of it, but yeah, it's failing to respond to what we've asked for, and to what the members want. What the employees want, what they need. Better pay, better terms and conditions, and job security. Essentially, we've seen redundancies happen already in BT, centres closing, locations shutting down all over the place, which has been in the pipeline for some years, but they've never announced where. So lately it's been happening where people have been made redundant and their centres are closing. So it's really important that we get some dialogue and we fight for our members. But yeah, it'll never be taken lightly. It isn't.
I think you've described that really well, because people aren't going to take industrial action just because it's fun. It's not a day off. I think people don't realise as well that when people do take these actions, it's a financial hardship for them. They're the ones who are going to miss out, so they're willing to do that in order to try to get an employer to take them seriously. Do you think that's well understood? Do you think, what's the role of the media in this? Do you think the media gives us a fair crack?
I don't think the media gives anyone a fair crack these days, to be honest, Paul. We've seen that this week, haven't we, with recent events. I think the media, you can't trust them. You can't really listen to what they've got to say without having any bias, because they are all biased, and I don't believe anything that they say, to be fair. But that's another conversation. Yeah, I think it is really hard for people, and certainly within EE, because we've only had recognition for a couple of years, and trade unionism to EE workers is quite new. To a lot of them, it's very new, and a lot just still don't understand what it's about. So it's about us educating them as well, that they can fight for what they need. They don't have to accept what's put in front of them. They can fight for what they need. They have us to fight for them. So nobody will ever sit down and take strike action lightly. It most certainly is not a holiday, and people will be impacted financially, but that's the risk that people are prepared to take. They're prepared to do that to get what they want and what they're entitled to.
Yeah, I think one of the things people don't realise as well is that it can impact your pension and all sorts of different things, because you have time out of service. So it's definitely not the easiest option. The easiest option is to it's got to be a desperate act, really. It is an act of desperation when people go on strike. Now, we've focused a lot there on sort of the quite a negative aspect. It's probably, for me, it's one of the areas that shows massive solidarity when people are willing to go out and support one another in the way they are during a strike. That's a hugely important thing. But industrial action is like the last resort, isn't it? What a lot of people don't see in trade unionism is the kind of the first resort, and I think a lot of businesses really are benefited by trade union action, trade union involvement in their everyday workings, because if they run it by a trade union first, you can avoid all this, can't you?
Exactly that. Yeah, and we do have conversations with management, certainly on a local level. We can do that, and it helps everybody, because if you go to a manager with a problem and you resolve that problem without having them to take it any further, well, that's fantastic, because that's helped the member, that's helped management, and and it hasn't gone really far without it needing to. So that's kind of what we're there. It's like a bridging thing, I guess, if you like. We're there to help rather than hinder, and I think a lot of people don't quite understand that. They see trade unions think, oh god, here they come again, sticking the nose in. Well, actually, no, we're not about that. We're about just trying to sometimes keep the peace. You can act as a mediator between management and worker, and that's a really good thing, and that's a positive thing, and it works. If you're having these conversations with management, that works. It can work when they're listening to you.
I think as well, because trade unionists are people who work in a place, they know what's going on in the place, and there are sometimes management will come to you with some sort of proposal that they think is wonderful, but you know, as a worker there, you look at it and you go, that's never going to work. And people, regardless of whether they're a trade unionist or whether they're a person who's worked, I think any worker who isn't a boss has had that experience where something's been presented to them and they've gone, this is nonsense. This is never going to work. So,
Yeah.
do you think a trade union is a thing that can help just get rid of that like nonsense area where like someone who's never done the job, doesn't have a clue how things work, you can help iron out the problems? Is that something that trade unions often do?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's most of my working week, to be honest, Paul, because I'm on the national team. So that's what we do, is we get round the table with management. Something new may come out. It could be anything. It could be bonuses. It could be shifts. It could be terms and conditions. It could be anything. And we will get round the table. They'll present to us, what they're coming up with. We will look at it. We'll scrutinise it. We'll ask all the questions that we know that our members are going to ask when this is presented to them. And if it doesn't look like it's something that's going to work, we can offer suggestions, and we all talk about it. I mean, look at COVID. When this started a year ago, as if it's a year, by the way, we've been sat in this room a whole year ago, and we started talking to the company weekly, and we are still having those weekly calls about how to get call centre workers working at home. And we did that in jointly with the company. We all did it together, offered solutions, offered all kinds of things, and policies, and new stuff about corona, and we managed to negotiate paid time off for if you've got symptoms, and lots of different things. So much flexibility that we've been able to manage to negotiate with the company in terms of working from home. And obviously childcare has been a massive problem, hasn't it, for everybody, with the schools being closed and with everyone working at home. And we've managed to negotiate all that with the company, and we did it together. So that's where it's worked really well, is that we've done those things together, for the good of everybody, for the good of all the workers. So that's worked really well when we've worked together.
Speaking of COVID, so the Communication Workers Union, they represent all sorts of different type of communication workers. So can you tell me who you represent and who's eligible to join, or who would be well represented by the Communication Workers Union?
Yeah, like you say, I mean, communication workers, that's not just people like BT and EE and call centres. Our biggest constituency is the posties. So all our postal workers, Royal Mail, Parcel Force, we represent all those guys. And that's a massive community, the postal sector. And also we've got some financial services too. So there's a lot of call centres, a lot of different call centres that we all look after. But yeah, there's loads of things. Openreach, there's another one, who are also balloting for strike action. Yeah.
Do you think it's COVID related that people are frustrated and balloting for strike action, or is this something that's been coming for a while?
It's been coming for a while, definitely, and certainly in EE terms, because obviously that's who I look after. I would say, since we got took over by BT, we can see as staff what benefits and what pay and stuff that our BT counterparts get. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, why are they getting that? We're not getting that. We're doing the same job. And so it's that kind of thing. So no, it's been coming quite a long time, and I think COVID situation has probably exacerbated it a little bit, perhaps because I don't know why, to be perfectly honest, but you can certainly get a sense that things have shifted since COVID, definitely, but it has been going on for quite some time.
I think if you think about like people who work in the postal services, I think they were underappreciated, weren't there, at some point? Early on during the COVID, the first lockdown as well, when the sun was shining and people were just appreciating one another, I think a lot of people start to say, hang on, people who are who are working as postal workers, they still have to continue doing their jobs. They are key workers, they are essential. And, the conversation seems to have moved on from that, and people don't seem to care about these essential workers as much as they did during that first lockdown. But you have got a lot of essential workers, haven't you, in your union? And a lot of key workers. I'm not sure, like, how, if that's become a political term or whatever, but they are essential. They're not just sitting at home having a nice time, sending an email or two a day, and missing the golf course. They are out there, like, pounding the streets and stuff. Do you think, like, would you like to see that that solidarity that people felt for those people continue on? And I suppose, how can we remind people of that? Because people seem to have short memories.
Yeah, they do have short memories. Remember us all clapping like seals, back in the summer for the care workers and NHS workers, which was a great thing at the time, and it brought everyone together in first lockdown. It was a really wonderful thing. But claps don't pay your wages, as we know. But yeah, obviously, everyone would love to see that kind of thing continue. Appreciating everyone. I think we should all appreciate everybody that's because everyone's got their own experiences. It's not just been about key workers that have had to go out and keep working. Some people have lost jobs, and we have to think about everybody. Here's the socialism again, isn't it? We have to think about everybody. But yeah, that momentum should continue. We should be appreciating these people that have been out working in all weathers, in all conditions, like they do all the time anyway. But yeah, that appreciation should definitely continue, and let's hope it does. Let's hope it does, because people do have very short memories.
I'm going to move on to the final section, which we tend to, maybe not spend enough time on, but it's what are your hopes for the future? What hopes do you see? Like, how can we use socialism to improve people's lives? How can we use trade unionism to promote to improve people's lives, and really solidarity? What's the importance of solidarity?
Well, I mean, you could go on forever, couldn't you, on this one? Hopes for the future. I mean, I guess it's the same as probably everyone's got, really, is just to have a really nice, fair, equal society, and for everybody to just get along. I mean, it's never going to happen, is it? It's such an ideal, but that's kind of what you want, and that's what socialism is born out of. It's wanting the best for everybody. It's wanting everyone to feel safe and secure. It's about getting them what they need. And I think we just need to continue with that. We need to keep building on the trade union movement. We need to get members involved. I mean, back in the day, people used to be taught about trade unions in the classroom, and it just doesn't happen anymore. And we need to do that. We need to teach our kids. We need to teach them about what socialism actually means. I'm trying and do that with my kids, certainly, and try and teach them what trade unionism is, which is quite hard to do. My kids find it quite easy to understand, obviously, because they live in a house full of trade unionists, and they have no choice but to join one. That's a lie. I'm not a dictator. But yeah, we have to teach the kids. We have to teach them, don't we? And it's in their hands now. I guess the future's kind of out of our hands now. The older we get, there's not probably a great deal that we can do now. We pass the book, pass it on to the kids. The kids have got to learn. The kids have then got to teach their kids. And we've just got to kind of hope and pray for a better society and a more community-based, mindset in people.
It's really interesting that you mentioned young people there, because young people really are my massive hope for the future, because they seem to really get socialism. They seem to have realised that capitalism just seems to hate them. It absolutely seems to hate young people. They're not going to be getting on the property ladder. They're not going to be doing things. And I suppose if I was a little bit older, I'd be a little bit younger, I'd probably be as messed up in a messed up situation as them. But being in the Northeast, we sort of missed the massive price hikes. Like, we had massive price hikes, but imagine being a young person in London at the moment, working in communications there. You've got all sorts of different problems that you've got there with the massive rent and everything.
Yeah.
What can we do to make sure that those people have a say in our society? Because one of the things I'm massively worried about at the moment politically is that young people are being entirely ignored, and that was my massive hope for the future, was that young people seem to be socialists, they seem to get it, they seem to really understand what was important, and they are on average politically absolutely sound. So how do we make sure that we keep young people engaged and we keep giving them hopes for the future and we support them, because things are getting harder and harder.
It's true, and I look at my eldest son. He's 21 this year, and he's obviously still living at home, because how can you afford to move out these days? And he's got a full-time job. He works with me. he's in my union as well, but he couldn't possibly contemplate moving out anytime soon. And yet at his age, I was already moved out, owned a house and had a baby. And that kind of thing could just never enter his head, because how on earth does he afford that, even on a decent wage for a 21-year-old? So it's really difficult, and it's about giving them a voice. We have to give them a voice. And how do we do that? Well, that's the $1 million question. I think social media obviously plays a massive part, because all the kids know how to use social media, or little kids are using social media, so that's a useful tool for them. And certainly within our union, we promote young workers. We have young workers committee, we have young workers sit on the exec, and even in our regions, we've got youth officers, and they play a massive part in being able to speak to the younger people. So I think that's important as well, is to champion our young workers and get them involved so that they can go out and speak to their peers. So it's about giving them a voice. We can give them a voice in the trade union, and for them to impart their wisdom on their younger colleagues.
I'm going to ask now for a final message for trade unionists. What do you want to tell people from the CWU?
I want to tell everyone that if you work in E or BT, you must vote yes, please. Thank you. That's my first message. When those ballot papers come, please vote yes. But I think people need to join, get involved with us. We're a really friendly bunch. We might seem a bit scary sometimes, but we're not really. A bit of a pussycat. So come and join us. We like lots of members. We like to talk to people when we're allowed to in the office. So yeah, just come and speak to us, find out what we're about, because we do some really good things.
That's absolutely class. So join a union. Whatever you do, join a union. Whatever your job, whatever your profession, job, occupation, whatever you want to call it, join a union. I think that's the message, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you don't know what your union would be, hop onto the TUC website and it'll tell you.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, Mel, and I'm sure that we'll see you on a couple of our shows in the future, a couple of our live shows, because you're always welcome.
I hope so. I absolutely love coming on. It's been such a blast. Thanks for having me.
We'll keep the red flag flying here.